Okay, we get things started. Okay. Okay. All right. So I think AJ, we got everything up and running.
We're good.
All right. Fantastic. Okay. So I wanted to welcome everyone to Mastermind with Neil Schwartz, and our special guest today is, where is this boy? Where are you? Mr. Darda.
I'm here.
There you are, Michael Darda. I thought maybe you fell off there for a second. Special guest from Florida, Michael Darda. We really appreciate you coming out here and joining us today and just sharing some really cool information. Just a reminder that if you have a question, we will take questions at the end, but if you have something along the way, and put it in our Zoom chat box. If you're watching on Facebook Live, then put it in on the live chat, and then we're also in YouTube, so put it in the YouTube chat. We have some of our producers monitoring those for your questions. So let's get started. Michael, so welcome to our opportunities today, helping us grow and do what needs to be done. We were talking earlier before the show started, and you were sharing with us that the way you saw it, that you could have more business in front of you so far this year than you've had behind you, and so far has been your best year ever. Tell me about that.
That's right. And first off, excited to be on the call. It's an honor. You're an inspiration. So thanks for having me on here, Neil.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, and I'm sure everyone knows you're so fortunate to be working with you guys there and your team. I believe that strongly because the inventory, like so many markets, is so low. And as a Mike Ferry trained agent, we're so skilled at being able to get that inventory and prospect it up and convert it, that, I just see with, as long as these interest rates stay low and those buyers are out there, this is our time to make a fortune this next 6 months.
That's fantastic. Great. So tell us a little bit about the market you're in, maybe the business that you've done. Give me a little bit of Reader's Digest version, so to speak.
You mean physically, or just the market conditions?
Well, just where are you actually working out?
Okay. Yep. So we're Southwest Florida, and that's Cape Coral, Fort Myers market is my core market. We're just about an hour and a half drive south of Tampa, just north of Naples.
And price point in the general area?
My average is 330,000,
Okay.
and that's pretty good. That's across the board. That's maybe 300. We're just slightly above the average.
Okay, good, excellent. And most of your business comes from past client spheres, expireds. Where does Mike Darda do business?
Yep. Well, past clients and sphere is a big part of it, but maybe not as big as you might think. It's probably around 35% right now. The rest is just good old fashioned prospecting. Expireds are still, even though there's not very many of them, is our second biggest source. We are strong on for sale by owners. We're strong on probates. We're strong on just a lot of little niche type of prospecting. We prospect permits, people that pull permits, and we cross-reference to see if they have an existing home in the area. They're going to be selling one of them. So we target notice of defaults, just a smorgasbord of leads, I guess you might say.
Good for you. Good for you. When you started in this, you said 32 or 36 years?
32 years.
32 years. So what were you, like 12 years old when you started in this business?
Yeah, not far off. I think I was like 19 or 20.
How did you get started to selling real estate?
Well, I actually had a business that I sold, and I sold it on payments to the new buyer, and didn't have nothing to do, had money coming in, and I was a relative said, hey, you know what you should do? Go into real estate. Your uncle sold a house and the realtor made a fortune, so I was, like I said, just about 20 years old. So went and got my license and just went to work and never looked back.
Michael, what kind of a business did you build and sell at 20 years old?
A great question. I got very fortunate. I lied about my age. Got a great job in high school at a company that was paying crazy money. It was a German-based company. They didn't know what our wages were here, so I was making killer money. I banked it all. Bought a business. I lived in Chicago, and then I bought a business in Florida. Chased a girlfriend down from college. She didn't work out too good, but Florida worked out great. And realized after running that business, it just wasn't the right fit for me. So after about a year and a half of doing that, I sold it and got right into real estate.
So did you have a finance background?
No. My dad was good with money and taught me a lot when I was a kid, but no formal education there.
So what kind of business was it?
It was an automotive business,
Okay.
kind of like one of these quick lube places, like a Jiffy Lube or Grease Monkey thing.
Sure.
So I was working with a business broker. They told me about it, and I went and checked it out. It looked really like a good opportunity. But once I got in it, I felt married to it 7 days a week. And of course, what do? I get real estate. So, and at the time I was managing 11 employees, and I was like 19 years old, 20 years old. And I actually had to hire a guy that was 55 to just pretend he was the owner because the customers wanted to talk to the owner.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, that's a great story. And then you just sold it and took off for the real estate side. So, I mean, how'd you get started there? I mean, listing, selling, mostly buyers. Tell me just a little bit about that.
Yeah, I went to work for a small independent, very small office. And what happened is they were smart enough to hire a trainer for the office. And this guy was smart. He came and he grouped up all the independent offices in the area. And he would do these little mini sales seminars like once a month. And the first seminar was awesome. He said to the room, he goes, "Hey, does anybody in the room have a $100 bill?" So somebody passes up a $100 bill. Does anybody in the room have a diamond ring? He goes, so some lady passes up a diamond ring. Does anybody in the room have keys to a new Cadillac? You know, this is 32 years ago, right? So someone passes up their keys to a Cadillac. He goes, so look at me. He goes, I've got a $100 bill, a diamond ring, and keys to a new Cadillac, and all I did was ask.
Wow.
So that taught me prospecting right there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I did the usual floor duty thing. I did that for a month. Put a buyer in my car. I had a brand new car, and it was a construction worker, muddy boots, the whole 9 yards. Showed them probably no joke, maybe 30 homes. They ended up buying a house. You're gonna laugh, $52,000 VA, $1 deposit, because I thought you had to have a deposit, and it was a deal from hell. It actually closed, but I thought, wow, buyers are a lot of work. And that same month, I was the only one in the office on a Saturday. The phone rings, I pick it up, and it's an attorney from New York. He says, yeah, one of my clients passed away. They got 2 properties down there I want to sell. There's no heirs to the estate. So I go look at them. I have no idea how to do a CMA. So I go through the form drawer and I find a residential appraisal form. So I fill this thing out. It takes me like 3 days. I send it up to him. And unfortunately, I didn't know what I was doing, so I underpriced these properties a little bit, but they were high-end properties. So, of course, they sold in less than a week, each of them. I'm like, now that's how you make money in real estate. So I've been a listing agent ever since.
That's great. Great story. Fantastic. So how was the progression? I mean, you were an overnight success. So last year you did how many transactions closed?
Last year we did about 205.
Okay. And how many people on your team?
I got a listing assistant, listing agent, I guess you would call him. My son works with me. And I've got 2 buyer agents. And then we've got 6 administrative people. And right now we're tracking for 285 this year.
This year you're tracking for 285.
Right.
Which means you've sold 140 closed and pending in the first half.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And did anybody tell you that we had that there was a COVID thing going on?
Yeah, I that affected me for about a week, and then I got over it real quick.
You know, I've heard that. We've interviewed 25, 30 guys and gals like yourself, and in every single case, a week or two was all that anyone had affected, and then everybody hit the ground running again. But everybody did get affected slightly, but it was only a week or two, and then they were back at it. You know, I talk to agents all the time. That's what we do. We recruit agents, et cetera, et cetera. I'm still talking to agents today that haven't got started since March 17th. They just don't know what to do. They have no clue what to do. And here you're on it in a week. Congratulations. That's fantastic. So we're going back a little bit. What was the progression in business? I mean, did you come out of the chute doing a couple hundred deals?
My first year, I did about 32 deals, I think it was.
Okay.
And it was mostly listing sides. I still worked buyers at that point. Got my first assistant after the first year, and it just progressed from there. I think there's probably only 2 times in my career that I actually had years that I went backward in production. They weren't huge leaps, obviously, or I'd be doing 1,000 deals a year, but they were just
Right.
gradual increases every year, and till we're at the point we are now.
Good. Excellent. You know, Mike Ferry always tells a story about a time in your life, in your career, where you were going on a lot of appointments, but your ratios were off a little bit. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, there was a time where I was going on, easily 10 listing appointments a week. And I was probably listing maybe 5 a week roughly. And, Mike says, God, you're working yourself to death. He says, so we worked a lot on creating the minimum standards that he talks a lot from stage. And one of those standards, of course, was pre-qualify every prospect, 100% of the time. And that among some of the other standards we put in place, dropped that ratio to about, I still listed 5 a week, but I was going on the right 5. I cut out the ones that were wasting my time by pre-qualifying.
Got it. So Mike, we talk about that situation all the time where somebody says, I'm interested, I want to do something, and we kind of get that thing inside of us that says, they want to sell, so that means they said they wanted to sell, or they said they might want to sell. So I know I could talk them into it, or I know I can do something with it, and they run over there. And then, of course, the emotional energy, because it doesn't happen or it doesn't happen fast enough. Talk to us about that, because that in itself would be really helpful, I think, for a lot of people on our show today.
Yeah, so that was a process I went through as well. I was, so excited to set an appointment, fearful to pre-qualify it too aggressively because I might not really have an appointment, so run out there. And I think what happens is when you start to become clear how much time you're spending unproductively, and that's time that's either away from your family, or it's time that you could be spent in the office looking for another productive listing appointment that's actually going to convert. You start to value your time more as you grow in this business. So that's what happened to me. I just started waking up to the fact that time is better spent on a qualified appointment than it is attempting to build rapport or talk somebody into selling it somehow, and it actually becomes very tiring. You lose energy, and then that starts dragging your business. So the reverse effect is when I'm going on really well qualified appointments, I'm actually energized, excited, and I can't wait to find another one. So I like to keep the momentum going that direction. Got it.
Perfect. But I'm sure this is what's going on in their head. Yeah, but what questions do you ask? How do you identify you went on 10, you got 5. How do you identify now the 5 that we're going to waste your time and eliminate those. So you end up with only going on 5 or 6 to get 5.
Well, I'm a big prospector. I spend the majority of my day doing that, and that gives me the luxury of being pretty selective of who I go to meet now. So I have a goal every day of setting 3 appointments, which might sound like a lot, like I'm going the wrong direction here. But what's great about setting 3 appointments a day is that I'll still probably end up going on 1, but one I'll cancel because I'll tighten up. I'll do the market analysis, find out they're way off on price, or I'll ask them some more questions and decide I'm not going to go on it and cancel it. One may cancel me for whatever reason, and then I end up going on the best one, the only one that's really worth going on out of 3. So that system's worked great for me this year.
So you set 3, 5 days a week is 15, more or less, right? And then you end up going on one each day, or however that works, but end up with five listings. And so 5 listings, 5 listings for 40 weeks is 200 listings taken. Is that kind of your number?
Yep.
Are we close to
you
that?
nailed it. Yep.
Huh. So you're taking, you, Mike Darda, are taking 200, or you, Mike, and your son are taking 200, or how's that working?
No, I'll take about 200. I think this year 205 was the goal. Truthfully, I'm about 11% behind on goal, but because the market's improved, the efficiencies have put us on track for our goal for sales. So we're actually dead on track right now.
Wow, that's fantastic. But you really don't do what Mike tells you to do all the time, right?
I'd be much better off if I did, but I try to do 70%. If I feel if I'm doing 70%, I'm doing really good.
So to get 200 listings, to set 3 appointments, how many hours of prospecting is that?
It's usually about 3.5 hours a day.
So it sounds like you're pretty darn efficient in who you're calling.
Yeah, I think my coach told me yesterday I'm averaging a listing taken for about every 25 people I talk to.
That's a very good number by anybody's standards, but that's a very spectacular number. So is that mainly past client? So let's back up. Is somebody setting up your calls for you, setting up your phone numbers for you, setting up?
Yeah, one of my staff, that's all they do is research leads for me, have it all laid out every day. So when I get in here, it's just, get on the phones and get going. So I never run out of leads throughout the day, and that's a key.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for just a second. When did you plug that in? Because in the beginning of your career, you wouldn't necessarily have the money to have somebody do that research for you. So how did you manage that? How did you balance that?
Early in my career, of course, I looked them up myself, all these leads, and then I realized that I was spending a lot of time there. So my first year in the business, at the end of that year, I hired an assistant who, ever since then, I've had somebody looking my leads up, and that alone will pay for itself, because you're going to never have the downtime. What's your prospecting hour worth?
So this is a really interesting point right here, because from the very beginning, you had an assistant, but the assistant wasn't somebody to go take the dry cleaning in. The assistant was somebody to actually make sure that you had phone numbers in front of you so that you could make those calls. That's a great distinction, Mike. That's fantastic.
So today I have somebody that I call my professional eavesdropper. She just listens in on me all day long to make sure that I've got the leads that I need. She knows the progression of the different sources that I call, so she can kind of tell if I'm starting to run low on something, needs to get more teed up for me. But that keeps my time extremely productive on the phone. So when I say I do, when I do 3.5 hours of prospecting, or 3 hours, that's a true 3 hours on the phone. I literally have a stopwatch on my desk that is counting only when I'm prospecting.
Got it.
If I step away to get a drink of water or something, that clock stops.
Clock stops.
Yeah.
Very, very focused on this.
Mm-hmm.
But it pays off fairly well. I mean, what are you at, $3 million a year now in income?
This year we're tracking for 2.3.
Not too far off, Neil.
Mm-hmm.
Good for you. Good for you. And that's with you're in a lower price point. If you were a little bit further south in Naples, who knows what it could be. Do you work Naples at all?
No, we tried that market. It's a good hour away, so
Okay.
it's inefficient to go down there, and plus servicing it's difficult. We're finding, especially with the all the online tools that the consumers have now, it's more beneficial for us to actually shrink our market and be dominant in a smaller core market, because then you're dominant in signs, you're dominant on web presence, and that's pays off in come interview me scenarios.
Okay, so to get bigger, you have to get smaller.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Heard that somewhere before. I got to write that down. That's great. That's fantastic. Okay, so let's fast forward a little bit. COVID first mid-March hits us. However, your state shuts down and does all the things that it did. You have the New Yorkers coming to Florida, the Floriders going to New York. I'm not quite sure, but anyway, that I-95 is quite a corridor. And so it kind of shook you for a little bit. And then what'd you do?
Well, first, I never missed a day of work through the whole thing. I came to the office every day. We were fortunate in that in our state, the governor declared real estate as an essential service. So we didn't have to shut the office down. Employees went to work from home except for one, which voluntarily stayed in the office, which thank God they did, because I had the support I needed to keep prospecting and taking listings. So first week I was, I was not sure how to handle the calls. I was not sure what kind of response I was going to get. I had a really bad week. I think I only listed one house that week, and I was just like, this is not good. So I started to look inward and say, well, what are you thinking? What are you saying? What are you doing? One experience I've had every area has its disasters. I'm sure, whether it's wildfires by you or earthquakes, or over here, hurricanes. So I started to think back when we had a disaster, because that's kind of what this is the disaster. How did we handle it? And what the last hurricane that hit, when you call someone, you don't know if there's somebody that's house has been completely, the roof ripped off, or if you're calling somebody's house that's completely untouched. And so we just went and started prospecting, and we found the people that needed to sell and wanted to sell, and refiled away the other ones that weren't ready. And so we just did the same with COVID. One interesting thing, Neil, I found about myself is I'm looking out the window at the office parking lot, and the parking lots around the banks and the restaurants, and everything was empty. And I found it was actually working against me psychologically. I was thinking, oh, nobody's doing anything. So I closed all the blinds in the office, and we just had to focus on finding the people that still wanted to sell. And once we took that attitude, the one parking lot I did like seeing empty was the Remax one across the street. That motivated me. So we just made our minds up. Look, everyone was affected by COVID differently, and still is. So if they're the people that are not going to do business because of it, fine, put them aside. We're looking for the ones that are motivated to do something because of COVID. And that's what we actually started prospecting. And then we went right back, Neil, no joke, to 4 to 5 listings taken a week, the second week of COVID, of us being in lockdown. And what was the benefit of that is, even though sales were weak at that point, we were building the inventory, and it was easy pickings because no competition, right? No call expired at 10 in the morning. You're the first one. I mean, it was that kind of
the only one for the day.
Yeah, yeah. So there was zero competition. We're like, this is great. So I think I took maybe 18 or 20 listings in March, and we continued to do the same in April. So when the market turned around and everybody started coming back out and buying, we were the ones that had the biggest inventory in town. So then, we turned around and I had my best single month ever of sales. I think it was May, was 40, something like 48 pendings in 1 month.
Wow, good for you. Companies don't do that, those kind of numbers. So
yeah, so that opened my eyes, and then our market share went up too. It was like 2 point something percent before COVID, and it peaked at 6.2% during the worst of it. It's come back down now as all the other agents have gone back to work, but it's still up from where it was.
fantastic. That is so great, and just terrific. So what would you suggest to our people? And a lot of great thoughts so far, but what 1, 2, 3 things that they could do to really supercharge the second half of this year?
Well, one thing we did that was very successful is we went back and we specifically, I don't know if your MLSs do this or not, but our MLS gave the option where people can withdraw or cancel their listing. They withdraw them for COVID, right? So they don't put days on the market or something. Well, a good number of those, just ended up expiring out and never coming back to the market. So we made it a campaign to target those listings as expired. We went back, and we normally give more time than this to go back and hit an old expired, but we specifically targeted every listing we could find that was taken off the market during the peak of the lockdown. And that was turned out to be a really good source of business for us. So that might be something your people consider.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great thought. Absolutely. Good. Anything else?
I guess, one mindset that we'd had through this whole thing that really helped us ramp up is we just looked at people a little different in the sense that we figured that with the events this year, some people that absolutely wanted to sell may not want to sell at all now. And some people that never wanted to sell all of a sudden will be super motivated to sell. So we just got in that mindset of let's just find those people that are really motivated to do something. And then right now we're attacking the old expireds. We're going back 2 years because a lot of these people have no idea how good the market is right now. And I would assume your market might be similar to ours, that it's very low inventory. Prices are way up. And a lot of these people can list now for much more than they expired at the last 2 years. And they may not even know it or be aware of it. So that's been a great source for us.
Okay, good. Excellent. Fantastic. You open to a couple questions for our group?
Oh, of course.
All right, good stuff. Okay, questions for Mike Darda. Who's going to lead it off for us?
Well, there was a question in the chat box, Mike, was how much time do you spend on each call?
Question.
Okay, hi, Robert. I guess as little or as much as it takes. I don't really have a concern about how much time I spend on the call. If I find out it's going nowhere, of course, the quicker off I can get is the better. But I have a rule of closing at least 3 times on every call, and then even then I try to close one more time that I'm comfortable with. So if even if I think the call is going nowhere, I will throw another question out just to see if it's enough to flip them.
Got it.
So,
okay.
Yeah, so I've been on calls today. Some of the calls were 1 second because they hung up on me, and I had other calls that went as long as 15 minutes.
Okay, good. Excellent. Good question. Okay, go ahead, Iris.
Thank you. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Michael. My question was, how did you close 32 deals in your first year, and what did you do?
Question.
Well, yeah, good question. As I mentioned, I had my first experience with a buyer was not a great one, so I just focused on listings. So I asked my broker, hey, how do I get more of these? So that broker suggested, well, try expired listings. And that's exactly what I did. I just started prospecting expireds. A fun story is I actually shared an office with another agent, which I'm still friends with today. But the crazy thing about that office, it only had one phone. And this is when we had a prospect from a landline. So he saw me setting appointments and taking listings with expired. So the next thing you know, I'm fighting him over that one phone every morning. So I'd come in 20, 30 minutes before him the next morning, and then he'd be pissed. So he'd come in 20, 30 minutes before me the next morning. No joke. We were calling expireds at one point as early as 6:30 in the morning. So needless to say, they were home.
But at that time, were you in coaching with Mike Ferry? How did you know what to say?
I wasn't in coaching with Mike yet at the time. I wish I was. I'd be, I can't imagine where I'd be today if I was there my whole career. But I was always big on educating. I was hungry to learn how to do the business. And I instinctively knew enough looking around the office that those were not the people that I wanted to learn from in that particular office. So back in those days, I would go to the board of realtors, and I guess they had a library of all the cassette tapes from all the different trainers. And I just constantly was learning from those.
What year did you connect with Mike?
It was about 25 years ago.
Okay. Got it. And what was the change from what you were doing to what he brought to you?
Well, I was already prospecting. I was doing about 95 deals a year at that point in my career. But I was very much buying the business. When I looked at, my expenses were probably, 50% or 40%, somewhere around there. And so the first change I made is stop buying business. And boy, the profitability swing was huge. And at that time, I had a lot of inventory, and I was so green, I didn't really know about price reductions. I just figured you listed something and it sold or it didn't. So my coach right away said to me, he said, "Mike, you don't need to take another listing this year with your inventory. Just start reducing everything." So between price reductions, and I think I went from 99 to like 130 deals the first year in coaching with Mike. So that was a nice jump there. And then you figure I cut my expenses down to something like, 25%. So the income swing was huge. So I was hooked.
Right. Got it. Good. Other questions? Go ahead, Albert. Unmute yourself, Albert, please.
Thank you, Michael, for sharing. My question is, you mentioned you have an assistant just to get your list in the morning for you to call. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us what that list looked like and what is that all about?
Yeah, so there's several sources she pulls for me all day long, and it's a big part of her job. So she'll usually get to the office at 7 in the morning. She'll pull all the expireds and cancels for me and gets all those, numbers teed up and ready for me to go. She pulls all the for sale by owners, has those laid out, the new for sale by owners for the day. She researches the probates, has those laid out for me. And then, she sets aside 15 past clients a day for me to call. And that and a lot of other little sources that we're experimenting with, like the notice of defaults, the permits. These sources are kind of new to us. She goes back and she, manages all the home light leads and the, referral exchange leads, all those lead services. And then she's also doing the market analysis for me and getting my listing presentation packages together. She basically just keeps me on schedule and on point all day. I'd say by having an assistant like that, my dollar productive percentage of my day probably went from 70% to maybe 85% because I'm just not wasting any time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Perfect. Good question, Albert. Okay, other questions for Mike Darda?
Yeah, Amir here. Mike, I have a question for you. Where do you get your data from, like expired FISBOs, probates?
Expireds are RedX. I think FISBOs are RedX as well. Probates, we're fortunate to have a really good system with our county online, and we pay for upgraded access, much like maybe an attorney would. And we can get a lot of the data there online.
Right.
Same with the permits.
Sorry to interrupt. So what about notice of default, also from RedX?
No, notice of defaults, we just get those offline too. Our county's got a very advanced and easily accessible and navigable online resource. So they give us a lot of information there. And we find it's more accurate and we can control it better, researching it ourselves.
It also helps you, Michael, I would suspect, because you have somebody that's bird dogging all of this and putting it into a format as opposed to receiving it from another third-party service. So that probably gives you a little bit of a leg up there.
Yeah, absolutely. No question.
Got it. Perfect. Okay, good. Excellent. Other question, good question, Amir. Thanks. Other questions for Mike Darda, please.
I have a question, Neil. This is Tess. Thank
Hi,
you,
Tess.
Mike. Thank you for coming. I have a question. So now, I mean, I'm sure that you've been calling a lot of expireds, and we all know, being in the business for a while, it has totally changed with calling expireds. And do you leave any messages for this expireds when you're calling, or how are you doing? Because it's really different now.
If I only leave a message on the first call, as long as their voicemail or identifies that I'm actually talking to the right person. You know, so if it's a nondescript voicemail, I'm not going to leave a message because it could be a wrong number very easily. So if I know it's the right number, I'll just leave a simple, message, something along the lines like, "Hi, this is Mike. I saw the home come off the market. If it's still available, I had a few questions, and call me." And then I give my phone number. And but I find it's less and less effective now. People are not returning those calls like they used to. So what I do is immediately, once I know I have the right number, I follow up with a text. So I'll text them my contact. I'll text them, that I noticed their home come off the market. I've been watching it for months. I've sent it to some of my buyers. And then I usually, the text gets a response. That's been pretty good.
So aside from the text, was there any other couple of attempts that you used to follow up with them? I mean, do you send?
Yeah, I will. I'll call them. I pretty stick to the 3-3-3 rule. The good old. I only call them 3 times. If they're a really hot property, I might try them up to 5 times. But I'll try them a couple different ways. So I'll call them not just in the morning. I'll do another round of prospecting, usually mid-afternoon. And then I'll do another round, typically after 5 o'clock sometimes, for the new expireds. Just try different times a day. And then I also got different phone numbers. So I'm not always calling them from the same number all the time. So that helps a lot. I find if I have a Vonage account, so I have a different number from a different area code, and they a lot of times will pick up on that because I'm a second home market. So if they just see they're all coming from my area code, they stop answering. So you call from a different one, all of a sudden they pick up.
All right, thank you.
Good. All right, good stuff. Morris asked a question on YouTube. Mike, what's your definition of a lead?
For me, it's somebody that's going to list their home within 30 days. That's what it takes for them to stay in my lead follow-up system. And then I've got the definition of a hot lead is somebody that's going to list within 7 days. And that's somebody I'm really all over.
Okay, got it. Now, do you stay on top of them using a CRM, or do you use a hot lead, just use a yellow pad and just keep hammering that name?
Yeah,
that's
an excellent question. Yeah, we are 100% when it comes to leads and prospecting, all paper-based. My son and I, that we both prospect together, we call the same people, and it's all paper-based because our feeling is a lead does not have any value until it's converted to an appointment. So we're not going to be putting them in a computer or maintaining a database that way. With the one exception, we do save notes, so like RedX will save the notes from our conversations. So when we call them as an old expired, we can be more of a warm call and bring up that stuff again, the motivation. But yeah, it's a paper system with a 31-day accordion file, and we just go at it that way.
Just go at it. Good for you. Good stuff. All right. Any other questions for Mike Darda? Anything else that we have?
Mike, there was another question in the chat box. If you were a brand new agent in today's market, what would be your approach?
I guess my first approach would be to just get right down with number one. I would be mastering the scripts. I would be just concentrating on role playing and being really effective at all the different scripts. And then since you got nothing else to do but prospect all day, I guess part of learning the scripts and mastering them is actually using them, right? So I would do it. I would just be like a prospecting fool. I would be, on the phone for 3-4 hours in the morning, and probably you'll find me on the phones again for another 2-3 hours in the afternoon. I know it sounds insane, but what else you got to do when you're brand new?
Heard that before.
Mm-hmm.
All right, good stuff. Okay, unmute yourselves, please. Unmute yourselves. Let's give Mike Darda a big hand. Woo! All right, good job. Good job, fantastic. Mike, you are quite an inspiration. Like I say all the time, we're either a warning or an inspiration. And you, my friend, are quite an inspiration. You are steady Eddie. You are the guy. Every single year you're there, you're doing it, you're making it happen. You're not going after the 31 flavors. You're not going after, let's do this and let's try this. You have a core business and you develop that core business and you use paper. It's, if I put it in my computer, it's gone. I have no idea. I'm sure it's there somewhere, but I'm just not handling it. Anyway, really good. We appreciate it. So what we tend to do now is we'll ask what we learned from the group. So if you want to hang, that'd be great. Kind of hear what resonated with them. Or if you need to leave, we appreciate it. We understand it. We thank you. We invite you though to our open mic. So if you want to do any of that, we can set you up with Zoom in the afternoons and have some fun with it. You might enjoy that. You might enjoy that. I know a lot of top agents are getting involved with that on a regular basis. So we encourage it. And you don't have to pay me a referral fee on the transactions. It's a straight deal. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. So what did we learn today? What did we learn from Mike Darda? Who wants to go first? Okay, Robert, go ahead.
Well, first of all, Mike, thanks again. I mean, the truth is I had a recruiting appointment at 11:30 and I was like, I got to get off this recruiting appointment as soon as I can because I love hearing what Mike has to say whenever he's on stage and stuff like that. So Neil, I'll be honest, that might not have been a good recruiting appointment. No, I'm just kidding. The two things that really stood out to me is you said only 2 times in your career you did less deals than the year before. In 32 years, I imagine you've gone through a few recessions, a few personal issues, a few different crazy things going on. For only 2 times to do less deals than the year before, that's incredible. I mean, to be able to fight complacency at that level was pretty inspiring to hear something like that. And then the second big thing that I wrote down here was you said when you prospect, you set a stopwatch, and if you go to the restroom, if you grab a drink, you stop it. That way it's a true 3 or 3.5 hours. I think that's a great idea that I hope people picked up on and will start using instead of just assuming we're prospecting from 9 to 12. That was a great point. Thank you so much.
Good. Thank you, Robert. Good question. Albert, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, I was just gonna say the luxury that you get, the more you prospect, the luxury that you have to be more selective who you actually spend your time with, and obviously it's gonna save you a lot of time. And I think
that's powerful. Yeah.
Yes.
That was a great thought. Good. All right. What else did we learn today? What else did we learn?
I got one.
Go ahead, Patty.
He closes 3 times on every call and then, on the call, and then he goes one more time, then he's comfortable.
Yeah, that's a smart approach. Absolutely. Good thought. All right, good. What else did we learn today? Other comments?
I learned that, asking for keys, the diamond ring, and the keys to the Cadillac. You get it because you ask for it. And that was a great story.
That was great. That was a good one for you, Cherry, because you got to just keep asking more people.
Yeah.
Okay. You have the skills. There's no question about it. You've developed the skills. So let's just ask a few more people. Good stuff. Thank you, Mike, for that. Perfect. Let's see. Armin, did you have your hand up?
Oh, yeah. You know what? I think that I would love for Mike to come on open mic any day, anytime. I think in more than a half hour also.
That'd be great. We'd love it. Okay, fantastic. So what I heard.
Can I guess? Can I guess?
Go ahead.
Get bigger by getting smaller?
Yeah, I heard that. But that was I've been trying to teach that for years now. You know what I think I heard. I'm sure I've heard before. But Mike, the way you lay it out. The goal is to set 3 appointments today. The goal is to set 3 appointments today, and then work through those appointments to disqualify probably 2, but at least 1. Okay. And then when you do that, you end up with 1. It makes the thought process so simple. We complicate it with all the crazy stuff that we're doing. Just go set 3, shake it loose till you get the 1, and go on 1 appointment every work day. 200 appointments, 200, in your case, 200 listings, because now you've shaken it down to 200 of the best listings. That's amazing. The simplicity of this business, somehow I think we were talking about this earlier, just before we came on camera, was 1 great appointment a day would give you 200 deals a year. That's kind of where my head went with this. But Mike, that's kind of where you're at with this process. So you've simplified it down to that's kind of where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
Why we have to keep it that simple. Stop complicating it. Okay, really good stuff. Anyone else have anything else that they learned today? Anything else they want to share that they learned?
And Neil, in regards
Sure,
to
Michael.
the old expires, I know we always say in our business, we don't get a lot of business from expires on percentage wise. Usually it's more for past client. He's calling a lot of old expires very successfully. Maybe he can share what kind of scripts he used on the old expires. We learn how to talk to the regular expire, but an old expire is somebody that's maybe trying to sell 2 years ago. So I know he's saying that he's trying to encourage them, and he's very successful on that.
Michael?
Yeah, the key with that is when you call them as a new expired, save your notes of your conversation. So when you call them as an old expired, now it's not a cold call anymore. So a common intro to an old expired for me, might be, hey Neil, it's Mike Darda at Compass Realty. You probably don't remember me, but we talked 2 years ago about you selling that rental house. You were getting tired of the owner, managing it. And I was wondering, now that the market is up, if you're ready to get that back on the market and cash in on the slow inventory we have.
So it's not an expired call. It's not a cold call. It's actually a warm call of just hey, remember when? No, that's great. It's very smart. Good
Excellent.
stuff. Good. Great thought. Great question, Michael. Thank you. Great question, Michael. Great answer, Michael. Thank you. All right. So, okay, unmute yourselves. Unmute yourselves, and let's give Mike a big hand. Appreciate your time, my friend, and your inspiration and your teachings. And I mean, you're the best. And to come on here with us, we really thank you. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Mike. We put your name and phone number and email address, etc., in our notes, so that if anybody wants to send you a referral, is that okay? You take referrals, I think, right? No? Yeah.
love referrals. Absolutely. Love to receive them. I love to give them. So yeah, you know where to get me.
Mike, let me ask you a question. Sorry, totally on that question. You're an icon in this business, in the industry, certainly in the Mike Ferry world. What percentage of your business or how many referrals do you think you get a year from working the base and doing little things like this and stuff? How many deals you get that way?
From agents?
Yeah, from agents that will send you business in your market.
I probably get maybe 3 or 4 a week for referrals that are listing or buyer referrals, and obviously we don't convert them all, but they I've really woken up to that, and especially with the Mike Ferry agents, they get to know you, so that's a good way to make your coaching free, is getting to know a lot of folks in Mike Perry.
So you could make it way more than free by doing, if you did one transaction a month, and I'm sure you do more than that, but if you did one transaction a month, that's $120,000, $140,000 a year for you. That pays for a little bit more than coaching.
Yeah, and I've learned to do that, within your company too. So, when your agents are networking with other Century 21 agents around the country, that's a whole nother database to be prospecting, especially from your core markets that people transfer in from.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually do that within the company. It's part of even what you see here. A lot of the agents, you'll notice, put the company, the office they're from, because we represent 8 or 9 offices. So,
nice.
Yeah. So, and again, to your point, to get bigger, you have to get smaller. So, instead of traveling across 2 counties to get somewhere else, make the referral to somebody who can do the deal, and then you can go out and get another deal. So you actually end up with a deal and a half or a deal and a third for the same amount of time. So it's just leveraging yourself. All right, everybody, let's give him another big hand. Mike Darda, thank you. Woohoo! All right. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it big time.
All right.